Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today's a special episode. We're going to be talking a little bit about FTL. I was playing some, and Pete sent me some sort of, I think it was Pete. Pete sent me an email saying, hey, we should totally, I was getting into FTL, we should talk about it, and I'm glad to be joined during Billy's hiatus by Peter Faster Than Light Busby. Hello.
Hey there, I've got some animal facts. Did you know the Cyclosa spider is tiny, but it will build a large decoy spider replica in its web out of leaves and twigs and dead insects to scare away other spiders?
That's fascinating, but you sound a little odd.
That's a spider that makes a decoy spider to scare away shit and then keep the web intact as it's getting moths and other insects and stuff so it can eat. And engorge itself.
That sounds,
That's the Cyclosa spider. Do you want another animal fact?
Those were animal facts, so I think that this is Pete, but you're going to need to prove that you're Pete.
The scientists have discovered a new organ in the human body.
What is it?
It's an extra layer in your skin. It's a compartment of fluid filled with air and liquid and connective tissues.
Okay, but
did you know that researchers have discovered a potential mechanism to disable a fungus that currently destroys about 30% of the world's rice crop each year?
I don't think that you're Pete.
Funguses are animals too.
I don't think that Pete sent this email.
I got another fact, but it's about DNA.
I don't think that you're Pete. Is that UZP? Did you tell me to play FTL?
Yeah.
Fuck. I've been hornswoggled.
Did you know the United States experiences 75% of the world's tornado, about 1,000 per year?
No, I didn't know that. That I should have known once you started telling me biology facts and not animal facts that you weren't Pete. But darn, your voice was so good.
I know.
Well,
but the deadliest tornado in world history is from Bangladesh in 1989, and it killed over 1,300 people.
Wow, that's quite a horrifying fact. And for those listeners who don't know this voice, this is Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. You might know him from our Final Fantasy episodes, and also making us play bad games. And I believe I've been tricked into playing a good game.
You were tricked into playing a good game. We were in a bit of a snag, so we played a good game.
Nope, we don't need to give any background.
Okay.
But this is another episode of ZP Made Me Do It, and this time it's FTL.
Yep.
So, because this is a ZP episode, I feel we've got our NBA minute and emails, because I've got some Final Fantasy related emails. I guess I can save those for the next Final Fantasy episode.
Sure, that seems appropriate, because, Final Fantasy is the looming monster that hangs over both of our souls and lives.
Final Fantasy 13.
I don't think it's really good.
I don't think it's a good game. I've played more of it than you.
Do you want to... this is going to be super quick. Do you know how much I hate the combat in Final Fantasy 13? It's causing me to think that maybe Persona 3 was good.
Oof.
Maybe the combat in Persona 3 was actually good. It's causing me to think these ideas. But like the party management in Persona 3.
Yeah, I mean, they fixed it in Fest. They realized that it was bad, and then in Fest they just let you play it like a regular RPG. But you can't do that in 13. And I was going to say you probably like it more than I do, but it sounds like you might not. Did I tell you the story of how I tried to get through Final Fantasy 13 the first time?
Yes, you've said that story like 2 or 3 times.
Okay. So, yes. It was the game that I tried to trick a friend into playing for me.
Do you know what I recently did yesterday? I tricked one of my high school friends into playing the game for me.
Way to go. The gift that keeps on giving. So if you want to send feedback for when we are talking about Final Fantasy 13 again, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. But ZP, since this is one of our episodes, it's time for the NBA Minute.
Yep. Everything went wrong for me.
Yep. So for a little bit of background for our listeners who have not listened to our 13
Everything
episodes.
that could have gone wrong went wrong. Why?
You made
We're going to watch a
predictions.
rematch for the third time in the row, Gino.
You made predictions about where the NBA Finals were going to go, and you said that the Celtics were going to beat the Cavaliers and that the Rockets were going to beat the Warriors. Right now, we do not know the outcome of the Warriors-Rockets game, but we do know the outcome of the Celtics-Cavaliers game. The Cavaliers won because, of course, they were going to. They had LeBron James, and the Celtics were down their two best players.
Real quick, Gino.
Yes.
If Kyrie and Gordon Hayward were healthy, I think the Celtics would have won.
I think that that's a very real possibility. But then again, I didn't expect the Cavaliers to have such an easy time dispatching the Celtics, despite their second-best player being out in Game 7. Kevin Love was out, and they still lost.
I appreciate you also seeing the value of Kevin Love.
Kevin Love's great.
Kevin Love is great. He gets way too much shit.
Yeah, he gets shit he does not deserve. He's a limited player, but the things he's good at are really important. Rebounding and shooting and passing. So, just because he can't block shots all that well. And his defense is subpar. But he
can shoot for threes reliably.
Yep, and he can survive in defense. Like, he's not as big of a sieve as some other players.
I mean, he was one of the few golden stars of the Minnesota Timberwolves when that team kind of basically bottomed out.
Yep. So you kept every time the Celtics or the Rockets won a game, you would barrage me with, you're going to have to apologize, you will have to regret your deeds and actions, but I won't have to regret shit.
Yeah, now Chris Paul is out for Game 7 in a hamstring, which basically means
it would be very difficult for the Rockets to win without their second-best player. Though the Warriors are down Andre Iguodala, and it is a home
They
game.
were able to win without Andre Iguodala. So what does that even mean?
I know, and the Warriors are up by like 70 points in the series in terms of their wins. The Rockets won 2 coin flip games and 1 decisive win, and then the Warriors, in all their wins, have been blowing them out badly.
Yeah, so if they don't have Chris Paul, I mean, there's only so much James Harden and Clint Capella could do.
Yep. So.
And I love Clint Capella. He's he's
really good.
He's probably one of the better big men. I think
he's one of the best big men that plays like a traditional big man. And it's kind of funny that now traditional big man means playing like DeAndre Jordan when people were scoffing at how DeAndre Jordan played not like 3 or 4 years ago.
I know this is something I've meant to bring up. I mean, so it's Anthony Davis.
Yes.
Joel Embiid.
Yep.
Clint Capella.
Yep.
Do you think Cat has regressed so much that he's no longer in the discussion, or do you think Karl Anthony Towns is still in that discussion?
I think he's better than Clint Capella. So.
But man, he had a bad. I mean, they're basically. I think I will defend Cat. I think that a lot of his difficulties these years, basically, people are telling him to do things that he's not supposed to do. People think that he needs to shoot for threes, that he needs to ignore the post when it's wide open.
He doesn't do that.
No, he totally did that when they were playing against the Rockets. There were times when Clint Capella had his back to turn on Cat, and he would just do a contested three versus just running into the post with a small person in front of him.
I think that the game might have passed Tom Thibodeau by. I think he might not be a great coach anymore because everyone else has learned, and I don't know that he's adjusted with the times. But we'll see. For the NBA Minute, you did have a question. Who's
your number 5 other than that? Is it DeAndre Jordan?
I mean, Boogie tore his Achilles.
Boogie's
so I don't know
I want to say Boogie. Boogie was, I would say, Boogie, until he tore his Achilles, was a solid number 2. But
does Draymond count?
He's not a big man, but he has a big voice. He's a center, but Draymond's not great at any particular thing you look into a center.
I mean, he's the best defensive player in the league.
He's the best defensive player in the league, but I don't know.
He can run the fast break. He's not offensively dominant, but he does everything.
I think he's my number 5 position. Man, I was really bummed out with that Boogie Cousins injury.
Yeah,
I mean, no one. It's a damn shame because he finally was on a team that kind of understood his value, kind of his purpose, what role he could fill, and he got the absolute worst injury for his position, which is tearing his Achilles. Because you and I both know, if you're a point guard or a shooting guard, you can kind of recover from that because you'll play on the perimeter and you'll play safe, pass the ball quick. Hopefully you can get your assists and stealing game up. But for a center, you tear that Achilles, you're a big guy, you're expected to go post usually. That's the worst possible injury for a big guy.
I would say at least Boogie's game was not predicated on quickness and athleticism, though part of him being able to beat you on his face-up was that he had a little bit more than you would expect someone of his size to have. So we'll see how he recovers. He's never been the most diligent about his body and about his health. No. So there's, at least he's a freak athlete, but
he's again, there was a discussion where people were thinking he was better than Anthony Davis, and there was a period of time where you could actually make the argument he was the best center in the league.
I think he's more skilled than Anthony Davis. I think he might be the most skilled big man in the league.
He's better at posting up.
He's better at shooting, too.
Yeah.
He's less athletic. Or he can't jump as high. I don't know.
He's starting to get that Charles Barkley chubby chubs,
Yeah, that's the problem.
He's starting to pack on weight like he's Charles Barkley.
That's a problem. So, did you want to have our little discussion? Or we'll save it for the next Final Fantasy episode.
No. Are you sure? Yeah, I guess you're right.
I think we've had enough NBA Minute. So,
Gino, why do you see the value in another rematch with the same teams we have seen for the past 3 years? I don't understand why you're excited to see the Golden State Warriors with LeBron versus LeBron James when you know what the outcome of that game is.
First off, you were asking me for a prediction, and I predicted. I said, I think this is the most likely outcome. So making a prediction that is the most likely outcome, that's just making a good prediction. But
you defended your prediction as being, this is also probably going to be a great game of basketball.
Yeah, because LeBron James is maybe the greatest player to ever play basketball, and the Warriors might be the greatest team ever assembled. Seeing the greatest player to ever play the greatest team ever assembled, I would like to watch them. If I could watch them play every day, I would watch them. They are both wonderful to watch. Now, LeBron's team, unfortunately, is not very good around him, and the Warriors are so bored 90% of the time because they can just rock teams whenever they choose to.
It's you know
shame.
Who's going to win that series. And that's my problem, is
Unless
I don't know if the Celtics, if they were healthy, could or could not beat
They could not.
the Warriors.
I know.
I think they might be able to get 3 games.
They couldn't have
There's no way that the Cavs in their current form are going to take 3 games off the Warriors.
I mean, they couldn't beat the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are a gigantic sieve on defense.
No, I'm saying peak, healthy, Kyrie, Gordon Hayward.
Oh, yes. I mean,
Celtics.
but that was not going to happen.
I just want...
Gordon
it's
Hayward
like we're
broke
in
his leg in the first.
Jordan shadow all over again, where we get to watch a team lose to the Warriors. It's like, which team is going to lose in 6 games to Jordan?
Yeah, but at least LeBron is so good that he makes compelling moments during those losses.
I feel the same
like
way.
the Celtics would have been pounded into the dust.
About the Karl Malone, John Stockton, Utah Jazz.
Yeah, except the Karl Malone and John Stockton are both Hall of Famers who are really good. This Celtics team might eventually have a Hall of Famer on it, but Al Horford's the closest thing of the people who are still playing, and they were going to get pounded into the dust. They might not have been able to take a game, and I don't know if the Cavs will either. Like, the Western teams are so much better than the Eastern teams. But
I think that's part of
because people are hurt. Because they've gone 7 games. Both series went 7 games. At least it's not the situation where the Cavaliers just ran roughshod over the East, went 4-0 on everyone, and then faced a real team in the finals.
I don't think we're going to see another 2016.
No, I don't. I think that the Cavaliers are too thin, and they are like the Warriors if the Warriors were to lose one of their starters. They are already at that point, and it can only get worse. So, with that in mind, with that out of the way, let's talk about FTL, Faster Than Light. You wanted to play this game.
I did. This is one of my all-time favorite games. This is one of my all-time favorite roguelikes. I feel like if someone asked me, hey, I hear you really like roguelikes, there are two games I'd think about recommending to them. The first would be FTL, and the second would be Risk of Rain. Because, actually, no. Risk of Rain is a little more intense. I'd probably do Rogue Legacy, then FTL, then Risk of Rain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that these three games, Risk of Rain, FTL, and Rogue Legacy, kind of show the best attributes of the roguelike format without a lot of the graft, without a lot of the shortcomings. Because I think even these three games that I've mentioned have a few shortcomings here and there, but they make up for it with just sheer replayability.
Mm-hmm.
And just, you know, you don't need a story when you're just this damn fun.
Yeah, and I would say, well, first let's just say FTL, it's a roguelike. You command a ship. You are a member of a rebellion, and you've got a valuable piece of...
No, it's the opposite. Remember, you're part of the Federation. The rebellion are the bad people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You are part of the You sure?
Yes. The story is that you're part of the
Okay.
Federation, and the rebels are the bad guys.
Okay.
Remember, it's kind of opposite world in the world of
Star Wars.
FTL, where the rebellion is kind of the bad people. They're the bad guys. And remember, the last ship is called the Rebel flagship.
Oh, right, yes. So you are a member of the Federation. You have information about the Rebel flagship that you're trying to take back to command, basically. And the way that this game works, your ship will jump between several sectors of the galaxy. Each sector is randomly generated, and every jump, basically you jump from star to star, or location to location, and every location you jump to will have different locations that you can then jump to from there. And the goal is to get from... You basically burn units of fuel every time you jump, and every jump you make gives you a random event that can change, your playthrough. Give you scrap, give you money, damage your ship. And as you play through, your ship will get stronger, you'll get more weapons, you will get access to more crew members, get more expertise, and then at the end you will have a final encounter with the Rebel flagship, and hopefully your ship will be strong enough to deal with it.
Correct.
And every game is slightly different, though certain things that you do can give you access to new ships or new bonuses to your current
Correct.
ship. Or new configurations, I should say.
That is correct.
So, I think that covers just about everything about FTL from overview, big
sure,
overview.
You are correct.
What is it about FTL that makes you want to recommend it so much? Like, as someone who's played a ton of roguelikes.
As someone who's played a ton of roguelikes, it's the classic case of simple to understand but hard to master. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to kind of wrap your mind around some of the basic mechanics and the basic premise of the game, but to put them all together and then actually get to the Rebel flagship and take down the Rebel flagship is incredibly difficult. That's something that we'll actually revisit because there's a lot to say about the Rebel flagship, good and bad. Good and bad. We'll get there though, but it's a real, the basic premise of managing this ship has been condensed to just easy to bite chunks and easy to process chunks. And they take this very complicated simulation-esque idea, manage this spaceship, take down the spaceship in front of you. And when you look at Star Citizen and other games like that, like Elite Dangerous, they have almost too much complexity. It's almost irreducible complexity, whereas FTL just boils it down to 4 or 5 mechanics, some of which you can opt in and opt out of, some of which you won't even be able to gain access to depending on your ship. And you just need to practice a few mechanics rather than just the entire thing. I mean, at no point you have to worry about overheating your lasers, overheating your shields. There is a basic mechanic in terms of managing energy, but it's very simple. And so it's simple on paper, it's simple to wrap your mind around it, but actually getting to that endpoint destination and putting it all together and executing upon it is very difficult. And every action moment, every accomplishment, however small or big, feels like an accomplishment. It feels like a big deal. When you get 30 scrap, that might not sound like a lot, but when you get 30 pieces of scrap, it's exhilarating. Like, I got something.
Yeah, and I can finally get that upgrade, or I can finally afford to buy a new weapon.
And again, there's a lot in this game that should be overwhelming, but somehow it's not overwhelming. Somehow it's not too much to handle. Now, again, we will talk about the kind of the final battle in this game, but I like it. I like it a lot. I feel like a lot of the appeal of this game is taking things that are normally really, really complicated and making it easy to understand.
Yeah, and some of that comes down to the fact that how you control this ship is there's a bunch of rooms that each control different elements of your ship. Your engines, your weapons, your shields, your pilot. All of these different things basically have to be crewed by people. And if you have someone crewing that space, like you have this kind of top-down layout of your ship, and you've got your crew members in there, and you can assign different crew members to different rooms. The only rooms that need to be manned, the only room, I think it's just the pilot chair.
Correct.
Everything else can be handled automatically, but you get bonuses for having someone crew. And then as you play, you basically have a certain amount of energy that your ship has, and that energy can be used to power different rooms and boost things. Like almost most rooms require a minimum amount of power to function at all, but then you can give it additional power to allow it to do extra functions. So like your engines can be powered up so that it can take up to like 3 or 4 pieces of energy, and it could handle that, but it will operate at 1. And you get a bonus if you put extra in there. You generally get a bonus when you've got people crewing. So these elements sound kind of complex, but ultimately it comes down to where do you put your energy and where do you put your crew members. And then when you're in combat, you've got certain weapons, and they just fill up on a steady timetable. And then you make sure that you've got you've got it pointed at the right part of your enemy's ship. And as long as you've got a sensor that will let you see into your enemy ship to see where, like, which rooms have the pilot or have the shields, you'll know where to shoot. And so generally you just need to target your enemy ship. And then the management comes down to, and you can pause, which is nice. If you ever get overwhelmed, you can just pause the game. But what you need to do pretty much is line up your shots on your enemy ship, make sure that your crew members are crewing things when everything's cool, and then they are running to take care of hull breaches or fires or boarding parties from your opposing ship if there's a problem. And then just make smart decisions about where you jump. If it looks like you're going to jump towards something that's dangerous, like,
a distress signal.
Or a distress signal, take into account how much health do you have left, can you afford things to go sideways, and if so, maybe take the risk, otherwise avoid the risks. And then just kind of progress. And the game does a really good job of kind of rewarding taking risks and also playing safe, depending on what's necessary.
And one of the best parts of FTL is that you really do feel like there's more than one way to handle each and every situation. And that's one of the defining characteristics of a roguelike. Getting to the end goal, there's so many ways that you can get there. Like if someone was to ask me what is a roguelike, I'd actually have to stop and think about it, because to me what roguelikes means, what that term means, is different than what a traditionalist would say, like the actual old school rogue. But the core of what a roguelike should be is that the game features levels that are procedurally generated. So that means you are probably never going to see the exact situation, the exact circumstances, the exact levels that you previously saw. Number 2, your character suffers from permadeath, meaning that if you die in the game, you have to start from the beginning or from some predetermined starting point, absolutely fresh with none of the materials or resources you had the previous time. And the roguelike should force you to learn its systems through the cost of failure. And that's the third and sometimes people forget this, the most important part. How do you learn the systems? How do you learn exploits in terms of dealing with certain instances or enemies? You learn through failure. And you think that it's harsh, and it does sometimes feel harsh, and I understand why people don't like roguelikes, but you learn through that. I mean, I feel like that's one of the defining characteristics of the Dark Souls or the Souls franchise, is that you learn how to exploit the game in order to progress further. And in FTL, you learn, well, that ship last time completely destroyed me. I don't understand how to deal with boarding. How about I try this new strategy or technique when I get boarded? And then you find out, oh, wow, that works. There's actually a value to putting this person over here, over there, and then recruiting these different peoples or races into my ship.
Yeah. Though I would say one of the things with FTL is that, like so many roguelikes, you really only get to play with what you're offered. If you start a game and just don't come across any crew members, you don't have options to recruit, you can be pretty stuck. I find that in playing FTL, the number one thing you need is bodies. Just getting as many crew members as you can get is, I think, probably the biggest thing in the game. And then once you've got that handled, upgrading your weapons and your shields are other pretty intelligent ways that you can swap shields. You can swap, I guess, shields you kind of need, but you can kind of swap shields with stealth. You can kind of swap weapons with drones. Like, you've got different configurations you can have to take over for some of these different things. But I don't think there's any substitute for just having a good, diverse crew.
I actually disagree in slight part. I feel like that there are systems that can replace the need for crew members, and there are certain ship systems or ship setups that actually allow you to circumnavigate that. There's the droid system. And this is, again, something that I like about FTL. If you face a shortfall in a certain attribute, there's a way that you can use your in-game resources to circumnavigate that issue. So maybe it's time to start using repair droids to deal with repairing and fixing the ship, so as that I can send the few people that I have into the most necessary main systems rather than subsystems or repairs. And that's actually a way that kind of FTL, the reason why I like FTL is that you can really sit back and enjoy for hours on end while traveling through space, and there's a different way to travel through space every single time. And if you try and get stuck in terms of using the same ship and the same strategy, you will probably never get to that Rebel flagship. You've got to start experimenting. You've got to start exploring different subsystems and main systems, and you've got to start exploring certain types of ships and find the one that fits your needs. And that, I feel, is one of the best attributes of FTL, is it encourages you to explore. It encourages you to explore mechanics and different types of ships, because something that I feel like is a big consequence or a big con on certain roguelikes is I found the class I like, I'm just going to keep playing the class that I like and upgrade that class and upgrade it again and again and again. And I'm going to use the same attributes because it got me halfway through the last time. It'll probably get me further if I know how to do it again.
Sure, but I feel like it's worth mentioning, in this game you do not get access to other ships without filling some sorts of preconditions. Now, when you beat the game the first time, you get access to, I think it's the stealth ship? The stealth cruiser? Or is it the Engi ship?
So it's the Engi, and they've completely changed that in the new version of the game. So in the Advanced Edition, what they've now done is you no longer are required to complete the quest lines in order to unlock ships.
Oh, that's smart.
You can now instead beat the game with the previous ship or a ship in this chain and unlock the ship next to it. So now, if you were to beat the game using the rock ship, you unlock automatically the stealth ship. And one of the neat things about it is you can play the game on easy. And this is something that I've always felt about roguelikes, is play the game on easy until you unlock all of the classes. And that's something that I always recommend to people when they're trying their first roguelikes. It's like, no, you should play on easy, unlock as many classes you want, find the one that you feel comfortable with, and then play on normal. That's the way that I played around with Rogue Legacy. That's the way that I did Risk of Rain, and that's how I unlocked almost everything in FTL.
Okay, so the way I played FTL, I played the classic version, so I had to go through unlocking each of these things by completing different quest lines.
And those unlocking quest lines are really one of the most frustrating things in the game if you follow them, because you can actually get screwed over. It's like, okay, this quest line cannot be furthered unless I have a slug, and I have this resource, and I'm able to travel to this far corner of the map and then exit through. It can be really frustrating. I mean, the one thing that they did not change is that the crystal ship still requires you to go through the crystal quest line, and to this day, it's one of my least favorite things in the game, short of the Rebel flagship. Like, getting the crystal ship is such a pain in the booty.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even get the crystal crew member. Like, in order to get the crystal ship, you have to get the crystal crew member, which that event doesn't proc every single time, and then you need to go through another quest line, right?
And then you have to hope that the crystal nebula or the crystal universe or that specific homeworld, there's a difference between a planetary system and a homeworld, just spawn, and you've got to hope that you didn't go into the upper left-hand corner if it's all the way on the bottom. So, yeah, it's not great, but again, it's a part of a legacy within this genre in which you place a huge value on procedural generation of levels and infinite replayability.
Yeah. So when you play this game, what is your go-to ship if you actually want to make it to the final boss?
So, in the original version, I believe it was the Zoltan B or the Mantis B. I mean, the Mantis B, for me, I feel like it starts off with some of the best defenses, and it's the only ship to start with level 2 shields right from the start, and it has a defensive drone number 1. So you can get through maybe the first 4 to 5 levels without ever advancing your shields. The Zoltan B, I really like the Zoltan crew because they provide free energy with whatever system that you put them in, if you put them in a manable system. I know a lot of people have a hard time whenever the Zoltans get boarded.
Yeah, because they suck in combat.
Yeah, they suck in combat.
They have low health.
And the Zoltan ships start with that overshield system, which is a godsend. The Zoltan ships start with that green kind of Halo-esque subshield that can even absorb missiles. Yep. So I like that. But in the new version of the game, that is to say the Advanced Edition, I mean, I refuse to play with the crystal ships because I think that they're just cheesy. They're very cheesy. But I really enjoyed the Lanius's ships. The Lanius B, for example, starts with an advanced flak cannon, a teleporter, mind controller, cloning bay, and then a boarding party system. And that's just crazy bonkers town. Crazy. But I will say that I really do appreciate that, something that roguelike developers, it's either the death of the game or it's where the game succeeds, is that they give you a pretty good starting class. Like, that's something that Risk of Rain does really well. That's something that FTL does really well, is they give you a pretty decent starting ship. Like, I was able to beat the game with the Kestrel, and certainly I don't think it's the best ship, but if you said your favorite ship was the Kestrel, I'd tell you, you know what, I understand. There's a way to make that system work. It's got a lot of space. It's got a lot of room for improvement, but it's not terrible. So how about you? What's your go-to ship?
Mine is the Engi.
Okay.
I think it's the Engi A. The one that comes with an ion cannon and then drones, attack drones. Because the ion cannon gives you... It basically just takes down shields temporarily or takes down subsystems temporarily. But it's got a very quick rate of fire, and when you man that weapon, the rate of fire is so high that it allows your crew members to level up their shooting very quickly, level up on weapons subsystems. Your crew members actually get better at manning the different things that they're, in charge of, and depending on what actions that subsystem controls, kind of performing that action successfully will cause your crew members to level up and get experience. So if you're a pilot and you dodge a shot, your pilots get better at dodging. If you're a weapon person, just shooting will make them level up faster. Getting shields back online will make them better at getting shields back online. And so having a weapon with a very low cooldown just makes it such that your crew members get way better at weapons quickly. And then when you get other weapons later on, your whole ship will just be much more effective offensively because you'll have much quicker cooldowns. And then the drones are super useful because a lot of ships, especially early on, do not have defenses against drones, and they will just pick your opponent's ship apart without you having to do anything. All you have to be in charge of is making sure their shields are down, and the drones will just pick them apart. Every few seconds they take a shot for free. The only downside with drones is they generally do not attack they don't attack as efficiently as I would like. You know, they don't pick the subsystems or the specific rooms that I would have targeted myself. But
if you can get a swarm of them, you can kind of get away with that because you're maximizing your area of attack.
Yeah, if you get like 3 offensive drones going, you can take a ship down very quickly. Though the trade-off with drones is that every drone you fire takes a drone part, and so you have to invest a lot in just kind of keeping your offense going.
Yeah. I feel like also the problem with the Engi ships is that once you get to the late game, you really do realize, oh, wait, there are certain builds and types of ships and strategies that the game is open to in terms of dealing with the capital ship, and then there are others that are completely unusable or untenable against the capital ship. And
Sure.
my opinion has always been that drones are a great way to get to the final level and then lose.
Yeah, they're not amazing against the capital ship. I have beaten it using drones, but it's hard. Like, you really need a lot of drones because the capital ship is one of the ships that can defend against them. And you need to, by the time you reach the capital ship, have diversified. Like, you need to get better weapons. You need to have some mantis or some people that will deal with boarding. Like, the capital ship throws everything at you. And
yeah,
so,
we'll talk more about the capital ship. But I guess we can kind of...
as much as you'd like.
You can't min-max as much as you like, and sometimes the game just is like, hey, I hear that you really want to get this next upgrade. The next 3 spawn points are going to be absolutely nothing. How do you feel about that?
Not great.
I don't feel great about that, FTL. Sometimes I feel like you're being mean to me for no good reason.
And that is a true roguelike experience. Oh, I jumped to this place, and it's near a sun, so now my ship is going to burst
ship
in
is on
flames.
Fire. Great, awesome, and I don't have rockmen. I guess we should talk about kind of the different races in the game because I do like the different races and how they do something really special with these different races in a way that I quite enjoy. So of course there's the humans, which are kind of the tabula rasa. The only good thing about humans is that they have the normal starting health, they have no negative attributes, but they have a quicker, like the experience requirements is minus 10% if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
they level up.
Faster.
They learn skills faster. Now, something that you have to kind of consider is number of blue options. That means that if you have this race in your ship, how many blue quest line options, how many random encounters and events will have a blue option only if your ship has the required equipment, crew, or system upgrades. And blue options are often more favorable outcomes than their counterparts, and they're basically a guarantee that nothing bad will happen to your ship if you click this option. It's not a guarantee that you'll get the best outcome, but it's a guarantee that your ship won't get fucked up.
Yeah, and that is definitely one of the main reasons I tend to try to diversify my crew, is that gives you the maximum access to blue dialogue choices.
So humans, they upgrade quicker, but they only have one blue option. Okay? So humans, generally speaking, will not unlock options for you in random encounters, and the only one is if you start talking to a rebel flagship and blah, blah, blah. The Engi repair your ship 100% faster. Unfortunately, should they get into hand-to-hand combat, they do minus 50% damage in hand-to-hand combat. So they're kind of impaired in that regard, but there are other races that are the opposite of that. And one time, it was kind of weird. I found an Engi, I forget what his name was, and sometimes when you encounter certain characters, they have their own special attributes.
Yes.
I found an Engi, for example, that does double damage, and it's called, like, half-breed, because he's half human, half Engi, blah, blah, blah. And so he was able to fight and still repair real well. The Engi are really notable in that they have 8 blue options.
They're really good for that.
They're really good, but there's one that's even better, actually 2. Mantises, they do 50% more damage in combat. They're 20% faster, but they will repair twice as slow. Basically, their repair rate is minus 50%. They have
claw hands.
Yeah, they have claw hands, basically. They have 4 blue options, which is decent. And if you enter the Mantis system, it's a breeze if you have at least one Mantis. And that's something that's kind of important to say. If you have that race and you have the choice between going to like a Nebula or a Rebel-held field, if you have a Rockman and you go into a Rockman home field, there's a high likelihood that certain instances that would normally be lethal will be avoidable. Rockmen are great. Like, people really don't like the Rockmen. I love them. They're immune to fire, which makes putting out fires way easy. Unfortunately, they're very slow, but they have 50% health.
Yeah, extra 50%.
Yeah, they have an extra 50% health. So they're actually one of when you get boarded, I like to throw in a Rockman and a Mantis. Basically, the Rockman acts as a tank, and then the Mantis is going to do the most of the damage if the Rockman gets in first and tangled up. There are Zoltans, which Zoltans are interesting because they have 2 blue options. So generally speaking, only in the Zoltan homeworld. However, they're basically space energy. They're kind of like this magnetic energy. And so if you put them into a main system, they add 1 power to the occupied system. And if a Zoltan does die, GTFO, because they blow into a burst of energy. But unfortunately, with the Zoltan, they start with negative 30 health, so they're really not going to be – they're a race that you got to be very careful with in terms of if you get boarded. But that 1 extra power really is clutch. The next are the slugs. They are very situational. They reveal adjacent rooms and crew of ships. They are immune to mind control, which is only an advanced edition content bonus. But where the slugs really come into as a big positive is the slugs have 11 blue events or a number of blue options. There are 11 for the slugs. So if you have a slug, almost half of the blue options open up to you.
Slugs, they've got telepathy. And slug ships are generally pirates. So
generally pirates, and if you have a slug, there are a lot of those pirate sequences where if you have a slug, you can avoid them. Mm-hmm. There's the crystal.
They're a special
race. They're a special kind of thing. And then there's the advanced edition Lanius, and I quite enjoy the Lanius. They have 11 blue options. They drain the oxygen from an occupied room. They're immune to suffocation, but they have minus 20 movement. But let me tell you, if you got more than 1 Lanius and you get boarded, just throw both of them into the other crew, and they will kill everyone in the room either through their actions or by just sucking all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, and having Lanius is one of the more interesting situations because it makes for a very difficult crew. Having a diverse crew is hard when 2 of your crew members or 1 of your crew members makes a room that they occupy completely free of oxygen. It makes it hard to navigate the rooms without damaging your other crew members.
But again, they have 11 blue options. They're tied with the slug as having the most blue options.
Yeah. And so I think these crew members, they play well off each other. And having a mix of them tends to be pretty advantageous. Though depending on which crew or which ship you pick to start with, you will get a different assemblage of crew members to start. Some of the human ships will kind of have a nice diverse crew. Most of the ships of the different races will start with a crew almost exclusively of people of that race. So the slugs, like you just said, like one of the nice things about their ships is that you start with slugs.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these different crew members are harder to get than others. Like getting Engi crew members I find very easy.
Yes.
Engi, Mantis, Rock, those are all pretty easy. I think Engi is the easiest.
Mantises are a little difficult.
Yeah. But slugs tend to be pretty hard to get. Crystal is the hardest by far.
Yes, correct. And I sometimes just kind of forget that they exist because I very rarely ever get them.
Yeah. And Crystal, the cool thing, they are a proto version of the Rockmen, so they have slightly less health than Rockmen, but more than every other race. They have a lockdown power, which will lock someone in a room with them or lock other people out of the room, and they don't suffocate as quickly. And they're still slow.
Yeah. I guess the other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, have you played, you said you played the normal edition. Have you played the advanced edition of FTL?
Maybe I have because I've got the Lanius.
Okay. And also something that the advanced edition added, it added in mind control, hacking, anything related to the Lanius, clone bays instead of med bays.
Okay, then I definitely have because I have played
and the backup
with
battery
hacking and all that stuff.
And there are times when I just want a normal FTL experience, and it is worth noting if you've never played FTL and you're listening to this podcast, the Advanced Edition is harder. There's no going around it. Like, the Lanius have a lot of stuff, and there's a lot more pirates, and it's difficult. Again, I would play just the normal edition of the game if it's your first time and set it to easy. But there's a lot of other balancing updates to the Advanced Edition that we don't need to talk about, but I think it's really interesting how they've supported this game. It's kind of like a feel-good Kickstarter game because way back when this game first launched, it was one of the few success stories from Kickstarter.
Yep.
I mean, the game was announced in Kickstarter in 2012, and they released their game in 2012. It's one of the few examples of a Kickstarter game that released on time.
Yep.
And I know that that's a weird thing to say as a compliment, but I kind of forget, oh, wait, that's right. FTL actually was a Kickstarter game, and it was successful.
It delivered on what they promised. The game was much beloved. It over-delivered. It is part of what made Kickstarter trusted, so that other games could then, some would say, take advantage of that trust.
Take advantage of that trust and never really end up doing that great.
Yeah, but this game, it was not especially... I don't want to say it's not ambitious because I think it's a good game. It's just...
It delivered on exactly what they said they were going to do.
The scope was manageable. It was a game with a lot of randomized generation, so it has a lot of content by virtue of that fact. The systems that they were building were novel, novel but simple. The style of gameplay was in a genre that really rewards replayability and provides a lot of bang for buck. So I feel like this is one of the genre choice and the way that they developed it maintained the scope while having a large value to the end user.
And honestly, more people who are using Kickstarter to publish their games needs to look at this.
Fund, not publish.
Fund their game using Kickstarter needs to look at this as an example. You are not going to make a AAA game using Kickstarter.
Well,
absolutely
it's
not.
very hard, especially if you're the first person. If this is your first game.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great example of how not every genre is created equal when it comes to indie development. There are some genres that are much harder to break into. I feel like roguelikes are one of the best options. If you're just going to start, they have tons of content by virtue of the randomization. The system can be pretty simple because players will continually replay it due to your difficulty curve. It just allows you to make less stuff and have people still see it in novel and fresh ways. So
And,
the game
and there's
kind of
something
takes care
that
of
you can
itself.
get away with in roguelikes that you can't get away with other genres. You don't really need to have a story. You
Nope.
really don't have to put a lot of value on your narrative. It would be nice if you have lore and flavor text, and I think that FTL has really interesting flavor text. But if you ask me if FTL has a story, I'd say nah, probably not.
There's a couple of interesting quest lines, but you don't even need to care about those. They will give you scrapper
And I will
items.
admit, one of the big cons on FTL is that it has all of this wonderful writing, and it starts to feel like a blur, and I feel like I'm just blowing through it, and it's like, I'm just going to click the blue option. Okay, I'm not going to pick the red option. I think this one will not kill me. Boom.
And
so
eventually you know which ones will and will not kill you.
Yeah, because you play the game so often that you start to see the same quest lines and the same events. But I feel like it kind of falls into that BioWare trap of where it's like, meh, I'm just going to pick the one on top because I think it's not evil.
This one's blue.
This one's blue.
Yeah, exactly like BioWare. This one I get access to because I'm super good or super evil, so this is probably the one that does the best.
Yeah. If you're an indie developer and you don't want to hire a writer, and generally speaking, if you're an indie developer, you might try to convince me you're good at writing. The answer is probably no.
That's true. So, we've spoken about the Rebel flagship a little bit. What are your approaches to it? What is your opinion on it?
My approaches are you need to have level 4 shields. Absolutely. You need to have at least level 3 doors or security systems. And you need at least 3 weapons.
Yeah, that's about right.
At least 3 weapons. And if your pilot and engine master are not gold, that means basically maxed out, you're not going to have a fun time. And what I find, and I think you have some opinions about it as well, is one of the frustrating things about FTL is that the Rebel flagship is basically one of the worst ways to end the game. Because it is difficult already, you have to beat it 3 times, and it almost feels like it funnels you and it requires you to do 3 different things, and a lot of the ships are not capable of doing 3 different things.
Yeah, your ships tend to be really hyper-focused and specialized, and then you will get to different sections of the Rebel flagship where it's like, and now you need to deal with being boarded, and now you have to deal with drones, and some ships are really good at dealing with one of those things, and other times not at all. So you can get into situations with the Rebel flagship where, like, the first round is a pretty fair, normal fight. Then I think the second round is when it starts boarding you, right?
Yeah.
And then the third round, it gets a ton of drones and missiles.
Yeah, it hits you hard with drones. And then also it has the Zoltan overshield, which means you have to inflict an extra 12 points. And despite the fact that you're breaking off these arms or appendages from the ship, it always starts with max health.
Yep.
And you don't.
You don't get to heal very much.
You don't get to heal. So I'm actually going to pull up one of my recent pictures of... I just recently beat FTL, oddly enough. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Nope, those are Final Fantasy XIII screen caps. Nope. No, please don't. Even when I tried to leave Final Fantasy XIII, it's somehow always re-entering my life, Gino.
Weird.
You've ruined my life. You've ruined my life, Gino.
Ruined or made it better?
So let's open it up. Nope. You stop. I don't want to fucking have Final Fantasy in my goddamn life. Okay, nope. Those are Final Fantasy X pictures.
You've made weird choices.
That's Mobius Final Fantasy. Great. Awesome.
Okay. I can find mine.
Here it is. So I've got, this is like, I had hull missiles, heavy laser level 2, hull laser level 1, 1 repair system droid. All right, I've got 4 shields on max. My hull is now down to 3 marks. The Rebel flagship has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hull points, no shields. So if my missiles do not hit and my laser does not hit, I'm screwed because he can still basically shoot off all of his missiles. And it's worth mentioning that missiles can go through shields. Yep. I think that's really interesting because you think, oh, I'm safe. I've got all these shields. Oh, no, wait. I'm not protected against missiles. And then, boom. Basically, every defensive option that you might develop can be circumnavigated if the other opposing ship has this thing. So,
and it's also worth mentioning the drawback with missiles is that it eats up a missile from your inventory every time you shoot one, but enemies are not subject to this constraint.
No.
So there's no downside to them having missiles.
Yes.
It just ignores your shields.
And I think that that's something that I dislike about FTL is that every enemy you face is not constrained by the same rules as you. And I think that's why the Rebel flagship feels as unfair as it is that it has this infinite supply of missiles, it has this infinite supply of this and that, and it's got 18 different goddamn rooms, and you have to beat it 3 times. And it just feels unfair because... And, Gino, I bet you've had this experience where you've maxed out everything on your ship, you filled all your weapon slots, you got like 2 droids ready to defend your ship and repair it, and you got all of your people in your main systems are max level 2 stars, and then you get to that Rebel flagship and it beats you by level 2, or the second go. It basically boards you. Huh?
That used to happen. After I got worked by the Rebel flagship enough times, I figured out how to do it on normal. So this was one of the first times I beat in the game. I had the Engi ship, and I had I had 6 crew members, 2 humans, 3 Engi, and 1 Mantis. Mm-hmm. I had max shields, almost maximum engine. I had 3 weapons, an Ion Blast 2, a hull missile, and a halberd beam. And then I had 3 drones, 2 combat drone 1s and 1 defense drone 2.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good setup. I had, because I really wanted to unlock the stealth cruiser, I was playing the rock ship, which is not a great ship because it relies on missiles. So I had 4 rock crew, a human, and an Engi. And I was using the rock cruiser A, which is not a great ship. But I was able to get through it. I do appreciate the fact that you no longer need to do the quest lines in order to get the opposing ships. You can just you can do this quest chain. But,
it's also worth mentioning that every ship has different numbers of weapon slots and drone slots. Like, I also beat the game with the Lannis cruiser, and for that one I had 8 crew members, a human, 2 Lannis, 1 Rockman, 2 Mantises, 1 Engi, and then I had a flak cannon level 2, a chain laser, a hull missile, and an ion stunner, and then a defense level 2 and a combat drone 1. And of course, you max out the shields and get as many engines as you can.
Yep.
That was a pretty intense, and I had a backup battery too, I think.
Yep.
So all these different subsystems, but some ships you just don't have access to stuff.
You don't.
Like, there's some ships that just don't.
That they don't feel viable in any way, shape, or form?
No, not at all.
Like, I know you said you like the Zoltan, is what you said? Or you said
no,
you
I
like
the
Engi.
ship.
Like, the Engi B is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, that's 1 Engi, and then you have to use drones for everything else.
3 drones.
It just hemorrhages money.
It hemorrhages money, it's small, it doesn't have enough rooms, and those weapons suck. I have never liked controlling the rock ships. I feel like they're too limited. And defensively, they're crippled. And I've never really liked... I like having slug crew members. I don't like any of the slug ships.
Yeah, they focus on mind control and
it's very situational.
Stuff.
There are some ships where that's a benefit and that's not a benefit.
Yeah, there's some... Like, boarding as a subsystem is kind of interesting because you send away members, and if you just murder all the people on the opposing ship, that will give you a victory. And that can be pretty easy. But some ships actually manage to have, like, separate sections of the ship, like, divided. So you can't just, board one area.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems with the capital ship. Like, there are finite there are discrete
There are
sections
isolated
of the ship.
rooms where you can't get into them or you can't scroll around into them. And again, it's one of the frustrating things is the game doesn't play by the rules that you and I have to play by. There are some times when you have people boarding your ship and then you scan the other ship and they don't have a boarding teleport system.
Yep, they just start in your ship.
They just started in your ship somehow. And even I've never been a fan of boarding as an in-game mechanic because I always feel like it's one of those weird situations where the game is better at doing it than me. And the game is luckier than me in terms of creating a crew where it makes sense to board. Because if I have a bunch of Zoltans, I should not be boarding. I should definitely not be boarding. If I have Engis and Zoltans, I should not be boarding. And so it's another case of, unfortunately, I feel like the game really has an advantage over you with this entire concept.
Yeah, and it will the part of it is just when you're playing the game, you'll encounter different races, and the race that your ship is will stay stagnant for your entire playthrough. So you will get kind of tested with all these different things, and then depending on which sections you're in, you will get thrown into randomized situations where you're extra screwed. You know, sometimes you'll just get hit with fire and you just don't have the crew to deal with it. Sometimes you'll get put in a nebula, and in nebulas you're almost exclusively hit with slugs, so you don't have the ability to look at their ship, but they have the ability to look at yours. In Mantis World, you will deal with being boarded constantly. In Rock World, there's way more fire, and so the Rockmen don't get hurt by that as much because they are immune to fire. All these different circumstances get thrown against you, and then there's also the constant threat that if you do a bad job of picking where you want to jump to, the rebels will catch up with you, and then you just have to deal with these escalating battles against rebel ships that give you nothing. The ships are strong, and then when you jump away, you will barely survive.
It feels a lot like a press your luck board game or card game.
Yeah.
Where you can try and check out that corner. You can try and check out that corner of the game.
But you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. You should just exit. And it's just something about it. It's like, man, I died. I had everything. I had all the tools. I have taken the means of production by my hands, and then I lost it. And then for some reason, I don't get mad at the game. I feel like trying again. There are times where it's like, you know what? Fuck this game. I'm gonna take a break, and then I'm gonna come back. And then I'm going to play another 3-hour session of this game. And there's something to that. There's something very special about FTL and how it manages to be one of the most unfair games I've ever played, and yet I keep playing it. And I don't feel like it's abusing.
The serving size.
Yeah.
The serving size is pretty small.
For some reason,
one playthrough is maybe 3 to 5 hours.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't like playing Dark Souls. I don't like playing Demon Souls. Because I feel like those games are mean. And FTL is mean, but I keep playing it.
I would say that the difference is Dark Souls and Demon Souls, you are banging your head with the same character against the same problem. You have basically one character that you might use for 40 hours. And if you can't figure out how to overcome this obstacle, sometimes there isn't another place to go. You can grind levels, but you will not be able to take on this challenge until you figure out some fundamental issue. With FTL, generally you just have much more health than your enemies, so you can slop through a little bit. When you die, you can pick another ship, or you can get new rolls, and depending on how the luck game's out, you could get a very different outcome without changing your style very much at all. So this game, because of the luck, it actually benefits, and I think it's just kind of a testament to luck-based gameplay and luck-based design that people... I don't know about you, but usually when I talk about games, they talk about it in terms of skill, right? That's how you frame a lot of the discussion around gaming. Was my skill rewarded? Is there a layer of depth here that I will be able to master and thereby gain an advantage? And we don't give enough credence to designing with luck and chance in mind.
Yeah.
I feel like, at least in the discussion around games, luck and chance give the unskilled player or the player who is learning and inexperienced a chance at a game they might not have a chance at if it was purely skill-based. It also provides a challenge to a player who has mastery. It will provide spikes in difficulty that they could not anticipate, and it will keep challenging them in a way that they might have thought that they had mastered the system. So it allows for this gameplay that instead of having a steady line of difficulty, it is peaks and valleys.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of peaks and valleys. And when you have it that way, it leads to an experience that can be frustrating, but you can always get that valley after that peak, and that kind of keeps you roped in. It keeps you engaged. It instead of just dismissing the game, you know that your luck could turn. And with that, success can be found.
So, Gino, you talked about the attribute of luck. That just means the next Deep Listens needs to talk about Mario Party, the ultimate luck-based game.
If you, I don't think maybe we can, maybe, but
Mario Party is 100% luck, and anyone can win. I know I've done my Mario Party. It's been 2 years. It's been 1 year since my original Mario Party rant, but you're right. Luck is a really fun thing. It's really cool to see your grandmother beat you, and she didn't put in any effort or skill. She just won because of luck. It's pretty interesting. Maybe there's something to Mario Party that you aren't thinking about.
So that's it for this show.
No?
Thank you, ZP, for making me play
No.
FTL.
Wait, what? No.
No?
We still got a few things to talk about with the Rebel flagship. So,
okay.
How many
Go
times
ahead.
have you beaten it?
I think three.
I think
3 times.
4 or 5 times. I've beaten it only
In
once
normal.
on normal.
I've
Only
beaten it
once
3
in
times on normal.
I feel like
I've never played on easy.
I again, if you want to unlock all the ships, I recommend just play the game on easy until you unlock all the ships because of the new way of the level progression. So we've talked about this kind of on the Final Fantasy podcast, and I'm just going to quickly pick your head here, Gino. You're someone who really values story.
Yep.
Why is it that FTL kind of gets a pass when its ultimate confrontation is so frustrating and there's basically no story? Why do? And you've also mentioned that you quite enjoy playing Rogue Legacy. Why do these games sometimes get a pass for you?
They get a pass for me largely because I am not coming to them for the story. I can acknowledge that a lot of times games take kind of my literary focus, and it fills that itch. But there are times when I'm playing a game to experience the systems or as a kind of secondary thing while I'm doing something else. FTL is a pretty good game for watching a video and also playing FTL or doing something like that.
Yeah.
Because once you've got it down, the gameplay is semi-automated. You can just keep, plugging away, and you will get progress. There are only a handful of really important decisions you need to make at any given time. So I feel like FTL, the gameplay loop is strong enough and the stakes are low enough that, and it's fun enough that, it's something that I like to just keep going back to and grind against. And learning the ins and outs of the systems it's pretty fun. There's enough depth there that it keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
Not every game has to have story.
Not every game needs
think
story.
It would be,
some games
I
need
think
to
it would be
fun.
better if it had one, but I don't know how. I think it would be pretty marginal because that's not what you're really coming to the game for.
Yeah. So I'm gonna.
I don't need Dive Kick to have story, but I'm glad it does.
Oh no. Oh God.
What? What are you doing?
Oh God.
Did you open a can of something bad?
Yep.
What did you open?
I'm not going to eat it. I opened the can of the fish during the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run.
Why did you do that?
It looks cloudy, and I cannot see through the cloudiness of the can. And it looks like the top of the can is covered in dirt. Oh, God. I'm going to throw up. I got to...
Why did you do this? I told you not to do this.
I had to know, Gino. And we've been so super serious during this podcast. Even our basketball talk was super serious.
Well, now you've smelled it. Please, God, don't try and eat the fish.
I'm not going to eat this. It looks bad. It looks really bad.
Yeah, because it is bad. Because it's expired halibut.
Mackerel.
Whatever. Fish. Expired fish.
I'm a child.
Yes. Why did you open it?
I had to know.
Do you know now?
I had to put like a hand sanitizer towelette on top of it, and now it smells like
Clorox?
Clorox plus farts. And I think the farts are winning.
Clorox plus farts is a really interesting scent of Clorox that they're offering now. Well, does that mean we're done?
I think so.
Okay.
So if you ever need a game, Gino, for future reference, consider if you really liked FTL and you really liked Rogue Legacy, consider playing Risk of Rain.
All right.
I will admit, it is definitely harder than Rogue Legacy. And there's something about the jump in that game that never feels good, like jumping as a mechanic. But there's something about that game where I put 50 hours of my life into that game, and I feel good about those 50 hours.
All right. Sounds good. So hope you enjoy your mackerel smell in your home. Thank you once again. Reminder, if you want to get in touch with the show and dissuade ZP from doing terrible things to his body, you can reach us at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter. Deep Listens, don't try some of it. Don't try any of it. Deep Listens Podcast at gmail.com and deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections. And you can also use YouTube, our YouTube comments. We check there as long as they are not vile like what you're doing. You do. You use all of the things. It's weird.
One of these days, I'm going to ask Jen for your home address, and I'm going to send you a letter with input about the podcast.
Great. An actual letter.
An actual letter with stamps.
One day.
And
I'll know that not to open that one.
And if you're a fan of FTL and you've got your own strategies and experiences, feel free to share them as well.
Of course. So this is another episode of ZP Made Me Do It. Thank you, ZP.
Yay, I did a good pick.
You did. All right. Till next time. Peace.